And welcome back. As you can see, we've started taking the valve springs off of one of the cylinder heads. And I've had these cylinder heads kind of sitting either on their side or valve up and springs down on these Rubbermaid lids here. And as you can see, just kind of letting the excess oil just drain off of them. So before we get into a major type of cleanup, since we know we're going to be putting new springs, new valve stem seals, and everything into this head, I wanted to get all that off, and then we can give it a nice cleaning, and then go ahead and start the reassembly. So I went ahead and took the first spring off just to kind of get a feel for the tool, that I'm using, which I'll give you a shot of the box there. So this is just an Aries large valve spring compressor. I've seen several other individuals use this same spring compressor. It seems to work pretty good. This one's not too badly priced. I'll put a link in the description for it. And this is the tool itself. You got two different size cups. I'm finding the smaller cup seems to fit pretty well with the top of the valve keep or spring keeper, I should say. So that would normally be on top of the factory spring, as you can see it there. And then once you compress it and have your keepers in place, then your keepers will hold everything together for you. But what I'm seeing here is that this piece, which normally again would sit on the top of your spring, seems to fit pretty well within that smaller cup, as you can see there. One thing I wanted to show you was that this is the factory spring here. You can see it's got some pink coloring on it. And this is the new spring that came from Pack Racing. This is what the tuner suggested to use with his kit. Now, height-wise, to show you here, they're not too far off from each other, actually. The replacement spring, as you can see, is just maybe a hair shorter than the original. But look at your coils. I don't know if you can see it very well, but this spring over here, you've got a thicker gauge of coil. It looks to be a lot beefier, and you can see there's fewer turns in this one versus this one here, where you got a little bit thinner of a material, but some turns very close here at the base, and then it kind of goes up from there. Now, compression wise, I can push that one down pretty easily. You can actually see me moving it with my fingers a little bit. This one, about the same. So unfortunately, I don't have the specs on the factory spring to be able to tell you exactly what the differences are, other than what you can see here physically. But one thing I wanted to show you, because I've seen a lot of other valve replacement, or I should say valve spring replacement videos. And I found something interesting on mine, and maybe this is normal, but I haven't seen anyone ever mention it. You'll notice, get it off here with a magnet, there's already a shim on the factory head. And like I said, that could be 100% normal, but I've never really seen anyone mention that on their videos before when they're replacing their valve springs. Because remember, these newer springs, when you looked at the earlier video, they actually come with different shim requirements. There's a different shim requirement for the exhaust versus the intake. One is a little bit thicker than the other, and in both cases, it's actually stacking a couple of shims together for each one. So each one will have two shims here and two shims here, just different thickness of the shims based on whether it's an exhaust valve or an intake valve. And I'll show you all that when we get to it. So I just thought that was rather interesting to see that there's already some shims here. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take the rest of these springs off. Interesting. So like I said, we'll get the rest of these springs out of here, and we'll just go ahead and continue the disassembly. I'm going to go ahead and set this tool up and kind of show you how I'm using it, because what's supposed to happen is that this side will kind of be setting against the valve. This is against your valve valve keeper. It sits on top of that metal piece. You compress it, and then when you get it compressed down enough, you can take your keepers out, relieve the pressure, and take your spring out. Now this is made to actuate, as you can see, but I'm not using it that way. I'm also taking things a little bit step further, and I'm actually using this to kind of serve as a barrier to press against. I've seen. I don't think it actually hurts anything, or nor that it makes a difference. But rather than having that metal surface of that C-clamp, so to speak, up against that valve head, up against the surface of that valve, I should say, I'm just using this as kind of just an extra layer of protection to make sure that I don't scratch or gouge the surface or the front surface of that valve. Again, they're made to take some punishment, granted, because they're inside the combustion chamber, right where the action is happening, just getting the snot pounded out of them, and they're fine. But I don't want to gouge them and add to any excess wear. But again, it's just me. I'm sure I'm just being paranoid about it. But take a few extra minutes, and I guess be a bit extra safe is my motto. What's going to happen is, if you remember, on the replacements, we've got new springs, we've got new keepers that'll be going on top, and of course, like I said, the replacement shims on the bottom. One thing to also note, and I saw another YouTuber whose channel goes by the name Reignited. I'll put a link to his channel in the description. He is a 10-year Mopar guy that does his own thing now, as well as YouTube, and he is phenomenal. He has a lot of Hemi content, changing out valve springs, changed out heads, engine upgrades, things of that nature. I highly encourage you to go out there and check out his videos. He loves to teach. Like I said, he's got a lot of excellent content out there about this. So if you got a minute, if you got a moment, go out there and check out his channel. I'm sure he'd appreciate it, because, like I said, I'm appreciating it. I'm in the middle of binge watching a lot of his videos now. And I think that's it. I'm going to pause the camera here. I'm going to get this utility set up, and then I'm going to bring you back and kind of show you how I'm doing it. See you back in a bit. And welcome back. One item I forgot to cover in the last clip, and it's just more of an interesting fact, is that on one of Reignited's videos where he was doing valve springs on a 6.4, he had a viewer write in and tell him that when dealing with a 6.4 in a truck configuration, which obviously we are here, that the valve springs in them are actually from a 5.7. So it's rather interesting piece of information. Again, I'm assuming that's still the case, even with the 2016 that we're dealing with here. But I don't know, perhaps we can research the color coding on this valve and see if that's still the case or not. But with that being said, I just thought it was rather interesting, wanted to share it. You can see here that we got our spring compressor set up on the top of our spring retainer. We've got our stack of 3M notepad that you see there, again, just giving us a little extra protection so we're not grinding up against the head of the valve itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get you in here to see this. Now this is going to be a bit choppy and a bit bumpy because that's a split washer there on top of a can of paint. I know, high value production quality here. So I'm going to try to get you in there because that split washer kind of angles the camera nicely, and hopefully you can see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start cranking in on this other end of this clamp and getting this spring to start to compress, and you should start to see that valve stem stick up a bit. And then once we get enough of it compressed, we can look at getting the keepers taken out. But the camera's going to jump around as I do this because I'm shaking the cylinder head, which is going to hit up against that can of paint. So I apologize. I wanted to get you in here to see one of these. And I do have some tripods, but they're the full-size tripods. They're not going to get small enough to get down into this view, but you know, one of these days we'll look at getting some additional tripods in and try to up the production value a bit. Now you're going to see me kind of fight with this because, again, this isn't the actual tool. This is a tool to be doing this with, but it's not the easiest one, and you just fell off your little spacer. So let me stop compressing this. Yeah, you can still see that. See if I can get you back in your spacer to fix that angle. It just does go without saying, I do apologize, I should have mentioned this beforehand. We are applying pressure to a pretty stout spring here to compress it. And the method that I'm doing it, don't do it this way. I guess is the best thing to say. Don't follow my videos as being a how-to at all. But make sure that you're wearing safety glasses, because you don't want something to give way here and end up in your face and cause you to have a very bad day. Okay, a little bit more on that, and then we'll see if we can get those keepers out of there. Yep, I see one of the keepers getting, looks pretty loose. I'm just going to take a pocket screwdriver here, kind of see what we're dealing with. Now they're in there, they're still in there. Still got a pretty good bite on them. You'll see one of the things this clamp is doing, which is why this is not the best way to do this, because as I'm tightening this, you can see this clamp kind of shifting in space. That's why they kind of want you to get it tight and just use this, you know, lever at the top just to quickly lever it down and compress it. Because you can see, there we go. You can see I can kind of rotate that with my hand, and that bottom keeper, you may not be able to see that too well, is actually pretty loose. Now this is a magnet out of a hard drive, of an old hard drive we took apart. So it's actually got some pretty good amount of strength to it. It wants to stick to anything but. Let me grab my smaller magnet here. It's not as strong, and it won't stick to everything in creation. There we go. You can see we've got our one retainer out. We're going to put that in our bucket. I want to see how loose that other keeper is. Oh, I keep switching between retainer and keeper. I do apologize. I do believe they're called keepers. Yeah, there we go. See, I can kind of move this clamp from side to side there, and you can kind of see it just fell out because I was able to get the pressure off of it and rotate it around to the other side, and you can see we got the other half of our retainer. Oop, oop, there you go. Oh, you fell down, you fell down, you fell down. You're all right, you're all right. Brush yourself off. Let's get you back in the shot there. I'm just going to undo this C-clamp, start rotating it backwards here on the other end, start taking the pressure back off of that clamp. And probably not the best video in the world you're going to see of someone to do this, but I'm just going to show you the kind of the way I'm doing it. My goal here is to hopefully provide enough information, maybe fill in the gaps in case you had some additional questions on doing this and or using this tool. You can kind of see our tensions out. Okay, so we've got our basically our C-clamp portion of that on the other side backed out as much as we can. Now in this case I am going to grab the handle on top and go ahead and pull it forward, take the rest of the tension off. You can see we can now get our spring out. That is our retainer. And then finally take our magnet once again. Take our keeper off. There we go. Take our shim out of the bottom. And once we have that, I'm going to go ahead and pull the valve itself out. And again, we're dealing with exhaust valves on this side, and this is the driver's side cylinder head. So what I'm doing, once I get each one of these out, again, pocket screwdriver is your friend. Going to go into our box here, let us know it's an exhaust, let us know the cylinder that we took it out of, and then we'll do the same thing for all of our intake valves. We'll get them out, same fashion, get them in our box. That way when we go to lap them, we're lapping them with the cylinder they came out of, most importantly, and reassembling them and putting them, basically they're married together. Like a lot of our other parts we talked about, we want to keep that marriage together. So we're going to continue to work on these. We're going to continue to get the rest of these valves out. Valve springs out. Once we do that, I'll bring you back and show you one that's had all the hardware removed. And once we get it done to both heads, we'll go ahead, we'll get them cleaned, and then we'll start prepping them to put new hardware back in. But don't worry, we'll bring you along for all that. And for now, we'll bring you back in a bit. Thank you much. Bye. Wanted to bring you back and show you one of the intake sides springs of this head. Just because of the way the head is shaped, I'm going to take this small piece of 2x4 block out of here to kind of show you that. You'll notice it slants down quite a bit just because of the way the head is shaped and where it's going to rest. What I found useful, to show you that again, it kind of just sits down there and makes it kind of difficult to work with. But what I found useful to do is just something soft like a 2x4 block. If you can just pick it up. Let's see, I'm just going to slide this block a little bit underneath that lip right there on that intake side, and you can see it does a nice job of picking it up and get it to where you can work with it. So I just wanted to show you that real quick, and because just to let you know, so you weren't fighting with trying to get these finagle this head and get this intake side out of here, just because of the way it was kind of wanting to lay lopsided a little bit. But we're going to continue on, and we'll bring you back. Thank you much. Bye. And welcome back. What I want to try to show you, and hopefully we can get this into the video, is I wanted to show you the method in which they want you to use this tool. Just to be fair, you can see this handle here moves that piece that sits on your retainer in and out. And so what you're supposed to do is kind of get this adjusted to where it needs to be. This piece again will sit up against the valve head, and then you put this piece up against your retainer, and you use this in one motion to kind of go and just clip it down in place, and that'll compress it in one fell swoop. So I've adjusted this to where I can do that with this, and I wanted to show that to you because it does make it a bit easier than kind of lining it up the way I was doing it and kind of cranking that in slowly. But you know, to each their own how you want to do it. But I wanted to be fair about it and show it to you. And it looks like that might just get inside the frame there. Hopefully I don't run out of battery before I can get this in the shot. So again, I'm just going to put my stack of paper against my valve for protection. I don't see anybody else doing it, so it may not be something you need to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. So you can see we've got that up against our retainer. Got this set back here. So what I'm going to do is hold on to this and kind of push this down in one piece. Oop, I dropped it. Let me get you back up here. Okay. You're going to fall off because I'm going to put pressure against this. There we go. Hopefully you'll stay put now. you can see that those keepers now are getting ready to fall out. So that was me again, just getting everything kind of pre-adjusted and then moving that lever down in one setting. I'm going to leave you there, grab my magnet, see if I can I got the first one out already. Put that in our dish. And there's our second one. So you can see adjusting this ahead of time to where you need it. I got to admit, it does make it easier just to put it in place, get it to where you need it, push this lever down in one setting, and you got it. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this lever out and unlock it and release the pressure, and then we can get our spring out. Now you're probably going to fall again, because again, you're right up against the cylinder head, because I'm trying to get you a shot of this. Yep, you're going to fall again. Okay. Oh. And yeah, a little bit violent, as you can hear, because you are releasing a lot of pressure in one go. There's our retainer. As you can see, we got our spring. And we're going to go ahead and take our valve out. This is our intake valve. Again, no worse for the wear. Let's get that into our box. There we go. And last but not least, we're going to take our shim out. So, and there's our stack of papers that we were using behind it, and you can kind of see the reason why I like to use paper behind it, because even though this is paper and it's pretty easy to cut into, you can see that suction cup on the end of that did a pretty good job of cutting through quite a few of those sheets. But this cylinder head, apart from having the seals removed, which all you have to do here to get these seals out, let me move a block out of the way, is just to get you just a nice firm grip on there, a pair of vice grips, a pair of pliers, and that'll all pull off into one piece. Now obviously, before you remove these, make sure that the replacements that you got, are going to work for what you need. Otherwise, if you pull these off, you're going to destroy them pulling them off. So you want to make sure, again, that's why you want to make sure you got replacements. Otherwise, you're going to be kind of in a world of hurt waiting for parts to arrive. But all we got left on this one is to pull our valve stem seals out, and then we can start getting this one cleaned up. We're going to do the same to this one, but I won't bring you along for that video, because it'll be just kind of more or less watching the same thing as I continue to use, again, this spring compressor tool here to go ahead and get these springs out. And since we have time to play with, I'm debating on ordering the actual one that's made for doing these cylinder blocks, the ones that'll bolt onto these valve actuators. And in order to put them all back in, that way we can do a video showing you what happens when you use a little bit more correct tool, and we can then judge, whether it's worth the money or makes it any easier or not. But we'll probably cut the video here. I may post this as a separate video. I think I will, just to kind of keep the content going. And I'll just title this one, obviously, just removing the valves off a cylinder head, as well as I may cut in a little blurb about us draining the rest of the coolant out of the block. And like I said, we'll call this a video. And then when we get these cylinder heads cleaned up, we'll bring you back and start doing ones for the reassembly of these. Anyway, I thank you for taking time to watch, and we'll catch you later. Bye. And welcome back. As you can see, we've got all of our valve spring hardware out of our other cylinder head, to include all the valves themselves. The only thing left in both heads are just the valve stem seals. We'll get those pulled, we'll get them cleaned up and get ready for reassembly. But one thing to keep in mind, not that I think anything I do should be considered a tip, but When you're taking your valves out like I was here, and you're working on one side of the cylinder head, if you do like I did and you go to flip it around the other side to gain access to it, remember you just changed the orientation of your cylinder numbers. So just keep that kind of stuff in mind when you're trying to keep track of where everything goes, just to make sure that you get it back in the right spot. But like I said earlier, one other thing we are going to do to these heads is that we're going to go ahead and lap the valves a little bit while we're in here. Again, we're here, it's all disassembled, no better time to do it. But when we get ready to do that, we'll bring you back. But what we're going to do first is we're going to get these cylinder heads cleaned up. I'm going to go ahead and cut the video here and kind of post this as being its own separate video. I'll bring it back a little bit when we do the cleaning, and I'll more than likely have the cleaning as part of doing the first part of reassembly. I'm just trying to keep these videos down a little bit in length so they don't get into the 30 and 40 minute blocks, because I do tend to ramble a little bit. I'm going to cut it at this point. We're going to get this thing pieced together. We'll get it uploaded, and we'll bring it back when it's time for the next one. Talk to you later. Bye.